I used to believe that family bonds were unbreakable, that the love I poured into raising my daughter would be reflected in how she and her husband treated me in my golden years. But I never imagined that the very man she married, the father of my precious grandchildren, would one day look me directly in the eyes and tell me I was no longer welcome in their home. What he didn't know was that I'd spent decades building a financial safety net that would change all their lives. And with a single phone call that evening, I altered the course of my family's future. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Ophelia Nightingale. At 72, I've lived long enough to recognize that life rarely unfolds according to plan. I was widowed early, lost my husband Theodore to a sudden heart attack when our daughter Eleanor was just 12. We had built a modest life together. He was a professor of literature at Westfield University, and I ran a small but successful bookshop downtown. When he passed, I was left with a grieving child, a mountain of medical bills, and the stark reality that I now carried the weight of our family's future alone. Those early years were difficult. I sold our large family home and moved us to a smaller 2-bedroom apartment above my bookshop. Every morning, I would rise before dawn to balance the books, organize inventory, and prepare the store for opening, all before waking Eleanor for school. In the evenings after closing, I would sit with her at our small kitchen table, helping with homework despite my own exhaustion. There were nights I'd cry silently in my bedroom, wondering if I was doing enough being enough, but I never let Eleanor see those moments of doubt. Through careful management and countless sacrifices, I managed to build something meaningful. The bookshop thrived as I expanded into rare editions and educational materials. I lived frugally, investing every spare dollar with meticulous attention. By the time Eleanor graduated high school, I had not only paid off our debts, but had saved enough to send her to Westfield University, her father's alma mater, without a single student loan. "Mom, you've done too much already," Eleanor protested, when I showed her the college fund. "You should be saving for retirement." "I am," I assured her with a smile. "But your education is part of my investment in the future. Your father would have wanted this." She excelled at university, graduated with honors in business, and secured a position at a prestigious marketing firm in the city. I couldn't have been prouder. And when she met Richard Harrington, a charming architect from a wealthy family, I was genuinely happy for her. He was handsome, ambitious, and seemed to adore my daughter. Their wedding was lavish. His parents insisted on paying for everything, making it clear that my modest contribution wasn't necessary. "Don't worry about it, Ophelia," Richard's mother said with a dismissive wave. "We can handle it. Just enjoy being mother of the bride." I sensed a subtle condescension in her tone but brushed it aside. This was Eleanor's day, and I wouldn't let anything diminish her happiness. The years that followed brought joy in the badge form of my grandchildren, twins, Lily and Lucas. I was there in the hospital the day they were born, my heart expanding with a love I hadn't felt since Eleanor was placed in my arms. From that moment, I committed myself to being the grandmother who was always present, always supportive. When Eleanor mentioned she wanted to return to work after maternity leave but worried about childcare costs, I didn't hesitate. "I'll watch them," I offered immediately. "I can adjust the bookshop hours. Mrs. Calloway has been asking for more responsibility anyway." "Are you sure, Mom? That's a lot to take on at your age." "At my age?" I laughed. "I'm not ancient yet." "Dear. Besides, what could be more important than being with my grandchildren?" For 3 years, I spent my days divided between running my business and caring for the twins. I would close the shop at 2, drive to Eleanor and Richard's suburban home, and take over childcare until one of them returned from work. I read to the children daily, taught them their letters and numbers, took them to the park, and baked cookies from Theodore's old family recipes. Those were precious days, watching their personalities blossom, hearing their laughter fill the rooms. What I didn't realize was that my presence was creating tension. Richard began making comments, little barbs that seemed innocent enough at first. "The twins are getting too attached to your way of doing things," he remarked one evening as I was preparing to leave. "Is that a bad thing?" I asked lightly. "Well, they live here with us, so they should be following our household rules, not Grandma's special exceptions." I nodded, trying to be understanding. "Of course. I always try to respect your parenting decisions." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Do you? Because Lucas told me that Grandma lets them have ice cream before dinner sometimes." It was true. Occasional treats were part of our special time together. But the way he said it made me feel as though I'd committed some grave offense. The comments continued, growing more frequent and less subtle. Richard would rearrange the toys I'd organized with the children, claiming my system made no sense. He would question the books I chose to read them, suggesting they were too advanced or not educational enough. He began coming home earlier, on days I was there, ostensibly to help, but really to hover and correct me. Eleanor noticed but tried to smooth things over. "He's just particular about how things are done," she would say. "You know how architects are. Everything has to be just so." I bit my tongue, not wanting to create problems between them. Instead, I adjusted, becoming increasingly careful about every interaction with my grandchildren when Richard was present. Then came the preschool discussion. The twins were turning 4, and Richard insisted they needed to attend Blue Harbor Academy, an exclusive preschool with an eye-watering tuition. "It's the feeder school for Westridge Prep," he explained during a family dinner. "The right early education sets the foundation for getting into the right colleges." "They're 4, I said gently. "Isn't that a bit young to be mapping out their entire academic future?" Richard's expression hardened. "Not if you want them to succeed in today's world." "But the cost," I began. "We can manage," he cut in sharply. "Eleanor's getting a promotion, and my firm is doing well. I knew their finances better than," he realized. Eleanor still confided in me, and I understood that between their mortgage, Richard's car payments, and their lifestyle, adding elite preschool tuition for twins would strain them considerably. But before I could respond, Richard delivered the real blow. "Besides, this means we won't need your childcare services anymore. You can go back to your bookshop full-time." The dismissive way he referenced my business, my life's work, that had supported us through the hardest times, stung deeply. But I maintained my composure. "I see. Well, if that's what you think is best for the children." Later that night, as I was preparing to leave, I overheard Richard speaking to Eleanor in the kitchen. "Thank God we're finally getting your mother out of our hair," he said, not bothering to lower his voice. "I'm tired of her old-fashioned ideas influencing the kids." Eleanor's response was quieter, but I could still make out her words. "Richard, she's been a huge help to us. We couldn't have afforded—" "We would have figured it out," he interrupted. "Your mother acts like she's indispensable, like we owe her something." "We do owe her," Eleanor insisted. "She's done so much for us, for me." "That's the problem. With you, Eleanor. You still act like you're that poor little girl from the apartment above the bookshop. We're different now. We've moved up. Your mother is just— she's holding you back. Holding us back. She doesn't fit with our life anymore." My heart constricted painfully in my chest. I stood frozen by the coat rack, my hand clutching my cardigan as Eleanor's voice rose slightly. "That's a terrible thing to say." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "She's my mother, Richard. And I'm your husband. The twins are our children. We need to present a united front on how they're raised, and your mother undermines me at every turn." She does, and I've made a decision. After They start at Blue Harbor. I don't want her coming over unannounced anymore. No more surprise visits, no more swooping in to save the day. If she wants to see the kids, she can schedule it properly, like a normal grandmother. There was a pause, and I held my breath, waiting for my daughter to defend me. To stand up and remind her husband of all we had overcome together, of the sacrifices I had made to give her the opportunities that led her to this very life. Instead, I heard a soft, defeated, "Okay, Richard, I'll talk to her." Something inside me cracked then. A fissure running through the foundation of what I believed about my family, about my place in their lives. I quietly slipped out the front door without saying goodbye, my mind a whirlwind of hurt and disbelief. The following week brought an awkward conversation with Eleanor. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, nervously turning her coffee mug between her palms. "Mom, Richard and I have been talking, and with the twins starting preschool." She hesitated, not meeting my eyes. "We think it might be good to establish some more structure around your visits." "Structure," I repeated flatly. "Yes, like maybe coming over on Sundays for lunch, or we could schedule specific days that work for everyone." I studied my daughter's face, the face I had wiped tears from countless times, the face I had watched transform from a grief-stricken child to a confident young woman. Now it wore an expression of uncomfortable obligation. "Eleanor, just say what you mean. Richard doesn't want me around as much." She flinched. "That's not," she began, then sighed. "He just thinks the twins need consistency, and sometimes, when you're there, the routines get disrupted." "I see," I said, keeping my voice measured. "And what do you think?" Her eyes darted up to mine, then away again. I think it's important for me and Richard to be on the same page as parents." The words hung between us, heavy with implication. My daughter was choosing her husband's comfort over my presence in their lives. After everything, I had become an inconvenience to be managed. "Very well," I said finally. "I understand." But understanding didn't ease the ache in my chest. That evening, alone in my apartment above the bookshop, I pulled out the album of family photographs I kept on my bedside table. There were pictures of Eleanor as a baby, as a grinning toddler with Theodore, as a solemn young girl at his funeral. There were more recent ones, too. Me holding Lily and Lucas in the hospital, the four of us at the park, baking sessions in my kitchen. As I turned the pages, I realized something with painful clarity. Richard wasn't just limiting my access to my grandchildren. He was systematically erasing me from their lives. The thought of Lily and Lucas growing up without knowing how deeply they were loved by their grandmother was unbearable. I closed the album and made a decision. If Richard wanted to redefine my role in the family, I would need to protect myself and the legacy I had built. The next morning, I called my financial advisor, James Whitaker. We had worked together for decades, and he understood my situation intimately. "James," I said when he answered, "I need to make some changes to my estate planning, particularly regarding the education funds for my grandchildren." "The college accounts? They're quite substantial now, Ophelia. Almost enough to cover full tuition at any private university when the twins come of age." "Yes, those. I want to redirect them." There was a pause. "May I ask why?" "You've been contributing to those accounts since the day the twins were born." I took a deep breath. "Let's just say I'm reconsidering my investments. I'd like to explore options for using those funds to expand the bookshop instead. Perhaps add an educational foundation in Theodore's name." James, ever the professional, didn't press for details. "I understand. I'll draw up the paperwork and send it over for your signature." 2 days later, I signed the documents that removed nearly $400,000 from the twins' college funds and redirected it into a newly established Theodore Nightingale Literary Foundation. The foundation would provide scholarships to deserving students from low-income backgrounds, students like Eleanor had once been. I told no one about this decision, not yet. Part of me still hoped that Richard's attitude would soften, that Eleanor would find her voice, that I wouldn't need to take such drastic measures. But life rarely gives us the resolutions we hope for. The next confrontation came 3 weeks later, at Lily and Lucas's 4th birthday party. Richard's parents had taken over the planning, transforming it into an extravagant affair at their country club. There were professional decorators, a hired children's entertainment troupe, and a guest list that seemed to include everyone except people the twins actually knew and liked. I arrived early with my gifts, hand-bound collections of classic children's stories I had carefully curated and personalized for each child. When I entered the club's grand ballroom, Eleanor was arguing with Richard's mother about the cake placement. "Ophelia," Richard's mother acknowledged me with a brittle smile. "You're early." "I wanted to help set up," I replied, setting my gifts on the designated table. Richard appeared from across the room, frowning at the packages. "What are those?" "Books," I said simply. "Special collections for the children." He picked one up, thumbing through it with disinterest. "We already have plenty of books for them. The latest educational tablets would have been more useful." I maintained my smile. Every child should have books that belong just to them. These are classics, stories that have stood the test of time. Richard set the book down carelessly. "Well, the gifts from our side of the family are more practical. College funds, investment accounts." He trailed off, giving me a pointed look that clearly communicated his opinion of my modest offering. The party progressed with mechanical efficiency. The twins were paraded around like prized possessions, introduced to Richard's colleagues and his parents' friends. They looked overwhelmed and uncomfortable in their formal clothes. Nothing like the joyful children who built blanket forts in my living room. When it came time for cake, I noticed Lucas's lower lip trembling. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, kneeling beside him. "This isn't the cake I wanted," he whispered. "I told Daddy I wanted a dinosaur cake like we saw in your bakery window." My heart sank. The elaborate tiered confection bearing the Blue Harbor Academy logo was clearly Richard's idea of making an impression, not celebrating his son's interests. "Sometimes grown-ups get silly ideas about what's important," I told him softly. "But next time you come to visit me, we'll make the biggest, scariest dinosaur cake you've ever seen, just for us." Lucas's face brightened. "Promise?" "Cross my heart." Richard appeared at that moment, overhearing our exchange. His jaw tightened visibly. "Lucas, go join your sister for photos," he instructed. Once the boy was out of earshot, Richard turned to me, his voice low and cold. "Stop making promises you won't be keeping, Ophelia." "What do you mean?" I asked, though a sinking feeling told me I already knew. "I mean that after today, your little visits with the twins are going to be much less frequent. Eleanor and I have decided it's for the best." I glanced across the room at my daughter, who was adjusting Lily's party dress, seemingly oblivious to the conversation taking place. "Eleanor agreed to this?" "She understands what's best for our family," Richard said dismissively. "The twins are starting at Blue Harbor next week. They'll be making friends with the right sort of children, developing connections that will serve them well in life. They don't need to be confused by alternative influences." "Alternative influences," I repeated slowly. "You mean their grandmother who loves them?" Richard's expression remained impassive. "I mean someone who doesn't understand our world, our ambitions for the children. Someone who still thinks reading fairy tales is more important than coding classes for preschoolers." I felt a surge of anger rising within me. "Those children are 4 years old, Richard. They need love and play and imagination, not networking opportunities." His eyes narrowed. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Your outdated ideas have no place in their education. Eleanor and I have a vision for their future, and frankly, you're not part of it." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'm their grandmother. And I'm their father, he countered, leaning closer. Let me be perfectly clear, Ophelia. You are not welcome to drop by unannounced anymore. You will not undermine my parenting decisions. And if you can't accept that, then perhaps it's better if you don't visit at all. In that moment, looking into his cold, calculating eyes, I realized that Richard had never seen me as family, was a relic from Eleanor's past, a past he wanted to erase, to replace with his vision of what her life should be. And somehow he had convinced my daughter to go along with it. I see, I said quietly. Thank you for being honest at least. I stayed for the remainder of the party, watching from a distance as my grandchildren were shuttled from activity to activity according to a strict schedule. Neither of them seemed particularly happy, but they were being molded into the perfect accessories for Richard's aspirational lifestyle. As guests began to leave, I approached Eleanor, who was collecting discarded gift wrap. We need to talk, I said softly. About what Richard just told me. She straightened, avoiding my gaze. Mom, this isn't the time. When is the time, Eleanor? When Richard decides it's convenient? When the twins are grown and don't remember who I am? Her eyes darted nervously toward where Richard stood chatting with his parents. He's just trying to establish boundaries. No, I said firmly. He's trying to cut me out of your lives, and you're letting him. A flash of guilt crossed her face, quickly replaced by defensiveness. You don't understand the pressure we're under. Blue Harbor expects parent involvement. There are social obligations, the twins' schedules will be packed with enrichment activities. And there's no room for their grandmother who loves them just as they are? Who doesn't care if they get into the right preschool or make the right connections? Eleanor sighed heavily. Mom, please. Can we not do this now? In her eyes, I saw a shadow of the little girl who had once clung to me after nightmares, who had wept on my shoulder after her first heartbreak, who had turned to me for every important decision in her life. That girl was still there, somewhere beneath the polished exterior Richard preferred. But she was buried deep. Just answer one question, I said. Are you happy, Eleanor? Truly happy? She blinked rapidly, and for a moment, I thought she might break through whatever hold Richard had over her. But then her expression hardened. I have everything I've ever wanted, she replied, her voice flat. A beautiful home, healthy children, a successful husband. Why wouldn't I be happy? It wasn't an answer to my question, not really, but it told me everything I needed to know. I love you, I said simply. I always will, no matter what. Please remember that. As I drove home that evening, my heart felt heavier than it had since Theodore's death. I had lost my daughter in a different way, not to death, but to a life that had no meaningful place for me. And my grandchildren were being directed down, a path that valued status over joy, achievement over kindness. The decision I had made about the college funds no longer felt like a reactive measure. It felt like the right thing to do. Those funds would now help students who truly needed support, who wouldn't take educational opportunities for granted, who might go on to create lives guided by gratitude rather than entitlement. When I arrived home, there was a message waiting on my answering machine. Mom, it's me. Eleanor's voice sounded strained. Richard mentioned you two had a conversation at the party. I just want you to understand that we're not trying to hurt you. We just need to do what's best for the twins right now. I hope you can respect that. Call me when you can. I deleted the message without returning the call. Instead, I sat down at my desk and began drafting a letter, one that I would not send yet, but that would explain my decision regarding the college funds when the time was right. Dearest Eleanor, I wrote, by the time you read this, you will likely be angry with me. You may feel I've betrayed you or the twins, but I want you to know that every decision I've made has been guided by love including the difficult ones. I continued writing late into the night, pouring out decades of hopes, fears, and wisdom gained through hardship. When I finished, I sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it in my safe, alongside the documents for the Theodore Nightingale Literary Foundation. The following morning, I opened my bookshop as usual. Mrs. Calloway noticed my subdued mood, but didn't pry. Around noon, the bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see Richard's mother standing awkwardly among the shelves. "Ophelia," she said, her voice lacking its usual condescension. "Do you have a moment to talk?" I gestured to the small seating area where I hosted children's story time. Of course. She perched on the edge of a colorful armchair, looking out of place in her expensive suit. "Richard told us about your disagreement yesterday." "Did he?" I kept my tone neutral. "Yes. He seems to think you're interfering with their parenting decisions." I folded my hands in my lap. "Is that why you're here? To tell me to stay away from my grandchildren?" She had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Not exactly. I'm here because I recognized something in your face yesterday. Something I've felt myself." That caught me by surprise. "What do you mean?" She sighed, suddenly looking older than her carefully maintained appearance usually allowed. "Richard has always been strong-willed, determined to achieve certain standards. When he was growing up, his father and I encouraged that. We thought we were preparing him for success." I waited, sensing there was more. "But the truth is," she continued, "we created a man who's never satisfied. Nothing is ever good enough. Not his accomplishments, not his possessions, not even his children." She met my eyes directly. "And certainly not his wife or her family." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked quietly. "Because I saw how he spoke to you yesterday. How he looks at Eleanor when she disagrees with him. And She hesitated. "I'm concerned." This vulnerability from a woman who had always presented herself as perfect was startling. "Concerned about what, exactly?" "About the twins. Growing up like Richard, never feeling they're enough. About Eleanor losing herself trying to meet impossible standards." She paused, then added softly, "About you being pushed out of their lives when they clearly adore you." I studied her face, looking for signs of insincerity, but found none. "What do you suggest I do? Richard has made it clear I'm not welcome." "That's why I'm here. Richard and his father are leaving for a golf weekend tomorrow. Eleanor will be alone with the twins. Perhaps that would be a good time for you two to really talk, without Richard's influence." I considered her words carefully. "Why this sudden concern? You've never seemed particularly interested in my relationship with Eleanor before." Richard's mother looked down at her hands. "Because I made mistakes with my son. I see that now. And watching history repeat itself with those beautiful children." She shook her head. "Some regrets come too late to fix, but perhaps yours don't have to." After she left, I sat for a long time, contemplating her visit. Could it be a trap? A way to prove I wouldn't respect Richard's boundaries? Or was it a genuine moment of connection between two grandmothers concerned about the same children? I decided it didn't matter. Eleanor was my daughter. The twins were my grandchildren. I would not be erased from their lives without a fight, not for my sake, but for theirs. The next day, I woke with a sense of resolve I hadn't felt in years. If Eleanor would be alone with the twins, this might be my only opportunity to speak freely, without Richard's controlling presence hovering over us. I dressed carefully, choosing a soft blue cardigan Eleanor had given me for Christmas 2 years ago. I baked a batch of cinnamon rolls, the twins' favorite, and placed them in a wicker basket covered with a checkered cloth. As I drove to their suburban home, doubts crept in. What if Eleanor refused to see me? What if Richard hadn't actually left for his golf weekend? What if this was just his mother's misguided attempt at family reconciliation? No, I decided. Even if all those things were true, I needed to try. For Eleanor, for the twins, for the family we once were, and might still be. I parked on the street rather than in the driveway, less confrontational that way, and approached the front door with measured steps. Before I could ring the bell, I heard laughter from the backyard, the unmistakable giggles of Lily and Lucas. Following the sound, I walked around the side of the house. The gate to the backyard was unlatched, and I slipped through quietly. The scene before me made my heart swell. Eleanor was chasing the twins through the sprinkler, all three of them soaking wet and laughing without restraint. For a moment, I simply watched, savoring the rare sight of my daughter free from Richard's expectations. Lucas spotted me first. "Grandma!" he shouted, breaking away from the game and running toward me, water droplets flying from his hair. Eleanor spun around, her smile faltering slightly when she saw me. But she didn't look angry, just surprised. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I brought cinnamon rolls," I said, holding up the basket, "and I thought we might talk." Lily had reached me by then, wrapping her damp arms around my legs. "Are those the special ones with extra frosting?" I laughed, patting her head. "Of course they are. Would I bring any other kind?" Eleanor turned off the sprinkler and grabbed 3 towels from a nearby chair. "Kids, go dry off on the porch while I talk to Grandma." The twins reluctantly obeyed, casting longing glances at the basket of treats as they trudged toward the house. When they were out of earshot, Eleanor crossed her arms, water still dripping from her clothes. "Richard wouldn't like you being here." "I know," I acknowledged. "But Richard isn't here, is he?" She sighed, running a hand through her wet hair. "No, he's not. But that doesn't mean—" "Eleanor," I interrupted gently. "When was the last time I saw you laugh like that? Really laugh without worrying about what someone might think?" Her expression softened slightly. "Mom, I'm not here to cause problems. I just want to talk. Mother to daughter. No agenda, no accusations. Just talk." She hesitated, then nodded toward the house. "Let me get the kids settled with those cinnamon rolls, and then we can sit on the porch." I waited in one of the wicker chairs on the wraparound porch, listening to the muffled sounds of Eleanor, helping the twins change into dry clothes. A few minutes later, she emerged in fresh attire, her hair tied back in a damp ponytail. She sat across from me, looking younger somehow, more like the daughter I remembered. "The kids are eating in the kitchen. We have maybe 20 minutes before they finish and come looking for you." "I'll be brief then," I said. "Eleanor, what happened at the birthday party?" "Richard told me," she cut in. "He said you were challenging his parenting decisions again." I took a deep breath. "Is that how you see it too? As me challenging your decisions?" She looked away. "Sometimes you do undermine us. The ice cream before dinner, letting them stay up late when you babysit." "Those are grandparent privileges," I said with a small smile. "But I've never contradicted any important rules you've set. I've never done anything to harm those children." "No one's saying you have," Eleanor replied quickly. "Aren't they? Richard told me I'm not welcome anymore, that my outdated ideas have no place in the twins' education, that I'm not part of the vision you two have for their future." I leaned forward. "Is that how you feel too?" Eleanor fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. "It's complicated, Mom. Richard has certain expectations for the twins, for our family. Blue Harbor is just the beginning. There's Westridge Prep after that, then the right university, the right connections. And where is happiness in this grand plan? Joy? Love? When do Lily and Lucas get to be children instead of projects?" Her eyes flashed with a hint of the spirit I remembered. "They're happy. We provide everything they need." "Do you?" I asked softly. Lucas told me yesterday he wanted a dinosaur cake for his birthday. A simple wish from a 4-year-old boy. Instead, he got a cake with his future school's logo. Does that sound like a child whose simple desires are being met? Eleanor flinched as if I'd struck her. That was Richard's idea. The headmaster was at the party, and he thought appearances were more important than his son's. Happiness, I finished for her. And you went along with it. You don't understand, she said, her voice rising slightly. Richard wants the best for them, the best schools, the best opportunities. The best according to whom? I interrupted. Richard? His parents? The society pages? What about what's best for Lucas and Lily as individuals, with their own personalities and wishes? Eleanor stood abruptly, pacing the length of the porch. Why are you doing this? Coming here when Richard's away? Criticizing our choices? I remained seated, keeping my voice calm. I'm here because I love you, because I raised you to think for yourself, to value your own happiness, not just how things appear to others. And I'm worried you've forgotten that. She stopped pacing, her back to me. Richard takes care of us. He provides a beautiful home, financial security. And in exchange, what does he require from you, Eleanor? Her shoulders tensed. Loyalty, support for his decisions. Obedience, I corrected gently. Compliance, the sacrifice of your own judgment. She turned to face me, tears forming in her eyes. You make it sound so terrible. It's not. He loves us. Does he love you? I asked, rising to stand before her. Or does he love what you represent? The perfect wife, the perfect children, the perfect family to showcase at country club parties? That's not fair, she whispered, but I could see my words had struck a chord. Let me ask you something, I continued. If you disagreed with Richard about something important, truly disagreed, what would happen? Eleanor wiped at her eyes. We'd discuss it. Come to a compromise. When has that ever happened? When have your wishes ever prevailed over his? She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. The Eleanor I raised was strong-willed, passionate, full of ideas and dreams. The woman I see now is afraid to let her children have a dinosaur cake on their birthday because it might displease her husband. You don't know what it's like, she said, her voice breaking. When Richard gets angry, when things aren't perfect, he can be so cold, so distant. The twins need stability. They need their father to be happy. My heart ached for her. So, you walk on eggshells. You defer to his judgment. You allow him to cut me out of your lives because it's easier than standing up to him. It's not like that, she protested weakly. Isn't it? His mother seems to think so. Eleanor's head snapped up. What? Margaret came to see me yesterday. She's worried about all of you, about Richard becoming his father, about the twins. Growing up thinking nothing they do is ever good enough, about you losing yourself trying to meet impossible standards. She went to see you? Eleanor sounded incredulous. Behind Richard's back? I nodded. She recognizes the patterns because she helped create them, and she regrets it. Eleanor sank back into her chair, looking stunned. I don't understand. She's always supported Richard in everything. Always taken his side. Perhaps she's finally seen where that road leads. I sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. Eleanor, I'm not asking you to choose between your husband and your mother. I'm asking you to choose yourself, to remember who you are, what you believe in, to be the mother those children deserve, one who protects their right to be children, to have joy, to feel unconditionally loved. She squeezed my hand, tears flowing freely now. I don't know how, she whispered. I've been trying to be what he wants for so long. I'm not sure I remember how to be anything else. Before I could respond, the screen door creaked open, and Lily stuck her head out. Mommy? Are you crying? Eleanor quickly wiped her face. No, sweetheart. Mommy's fine. Why don't you and Lucas bring your coloring books out here? You can show Grandma your drawings. The next hour passed in a blessed bubble of normalcy. The twins showed me their artwork, told me about their friends, and begged for stories about when their mother was a little girl. Eleanor gradually relaxed, laughing at my tales of her childhood misadventures, adding details I'd forgotten. For a brief, precious time, we were simply a family enjoying each other's company. No pressure, no performance, no Richard. As the afternoon waned, I knew I needed to address one more critical matter. While the twins were distracted with a game of hide-and-seek in the garden, I turned to Eleanor. "There's something else we need to discuss," I began carefully. "Something important." She tensed immediately. "What is it?" "The college funds for the twins." Her expression softened. "Mom, you don't need to worry about that. Richard has set up accounts for them. His parents have contributed too." "I'm sure they have," I said. "But there's something you should know. I've made some changes to the funds I established." "Changes?" She frowned. "What kind of changes?" I took a deep breath. "I've redirected those funds to establish the Theodore Nightingale Literary Foundation. It will provide scholarships to deserving students from underprivileged backgrounds." Eleanor stared at me in disbelief. "You what? Mom? Those accounts had nearly $400,000, I finished for her. "Yes, it was quite a substantial sum. But why? Those were for Lily and Lucas's education. And now they'll help other children who don't have wealthy grandparents or trust funds waiting for them." Eleanor stood abruptly. "I can't believe you would do this. Those were their future." "No," I said firmly. "Those were a backup plan. A safety net I created because that's what I've always done. Prepared for the unexpected, provided security for my family." I met her gaze steadily. "But when Richard made it clear I wasn't welcome in your lives anymore, I had to reconsider what that meant for my financial responsibilities as well." "So this is what? Punishment? Revenge because Richard hurt your feelings?" I shook my head. "It's a consequence, Eleanor. If I'm not family enough to be welcome in your home, then perhaps my money isn't family money either."